Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Agti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Agti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey, Aaron, great to be here today, and thanks everybody for listening and watching.
Great to be here as well. So a few days ago, Trishul sent me a Forbes article titled Unrealized Gains Tax is Capital Punishment by contributor David Birnbaum. And as we kind of were talking about this, realized this is a really good idea to, one, kind of talk about capital gains tax in general. It's a little bit of wealth inequality, which we've touched on in the past. It's kind of one of our topics we keep coming back to. But also, this is like the closest we really want to get to politics in fall of 2024. We don't want to get like specific predictions, like which president, but this particular plan felt like right up our alley in terms of how we think and how we want to address this. So, Trishul, first, and we'll put a link to this article. This is very specific, addressing the points that he has. So, Trishul, why don't you start off? First, give us a context on capital gains taxes. Then, if you want to kind of go in a little bit, the Kamala Harris tax proposal on unrealized gains, and then we'll start going to some of the bullet points of that article.
Right. Yeah, okay. Happy to. Let's kind of start at a high level, and then we'll just drill down, peel this onion, and see where it takes us.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. Let's start with capital gains tax. So stepping back, essentially, you have income from many different sources, potentially. You can have income from a job, right? You can be an employee and get income that way. You can get income through also investing. And from investing, there are a couple of different sources of income when you invest. One of the sources is you may get interest, right? If you put money in a bank, that's income, and you get taxed on that as interest income. Another way you might get taxed is if you buy stock in a company and the company pays out a dividend, maybe quarterly or annually or some sort of other type of schedule. Well, that dividend income that you get is also taxed. And the other way is through this notion of capital gains. And the idea here is you put your money in an asset, and if that asset or investment increases in value, well, then there might be some tax there. I say might because that comes down to this notion of unrealized gains versus realized gains. So when you are taxed on an investment that gains in value, the tax actually doesn't come due until you make a sale of that investment. So at that point, the gains are realized, they become true in nature from some perspective, and you pay tax on that. But, let's say you do buy an investment and you bought it last year and it went up this year and it went up again next year. Well, these gains are there because you kind of see that the value of the investment has increased. Let's say you bought IBM for $100 and it went up to $110 and now it's $120 and next year it's $130. If you don't sell IBM, you have $30 in gains that are unrealized, so you don't have to pay taxes on that.
So the idea is that you have not received that gain.
Yeah.
And that constructive receipt idea when it comes to income tax code. So you haven't received the gain, so you don't owe taxes on it yet.
Yeah, you don't. And you can see how this provides some incentive to kind of buy things and hold them for a long time rather than selling it very quickly, because once you realize it, then you got to pay the tax. So the longer you can hold off on realizing the gains, the longer you can defer these taxes that you should have been paying every year. Now, before we talk about the nuances related to realized and unrealized gains, let's just talk about generally at a high level, tax rates in general.
Mhm.
So we talked about these various sources of income that individual may have, and the notion that these are all taxed, and they're all taxed at different rates. So that's important to understand. The core tax that we kind of think about is income taxes on wages. And this is typically from like your W-2 position. You have a full-time job, you have a salary of 100,000, you get taxed on that income. And these tax rates are employment taxes that you pay. Let's see, we can pull up some quick numbers here.
They'll say 10%, 12%, 22, 25, 32, 35, 37, something like that, going from poverty level up to incomes of $1 million, depending on if you are single, married filing joint, or married filing separate, etc.
Yeah, it does get a bit complicated, but essentially this is that notion of having a marginal tax rate where as your income goes up, the percentage of taxes that you pay on each additional dollar increases.
Yeah.
So for example,
a small thing I see on that, if you go in from the 22% bracket to the 35% bracket, you don't pay 35% on all of your income.
Yeah.
You only pay 35% on the amount over that 22% bracket.
Right.
So you still pay 10% on your first amount, then 12, then 22, then it keeps going up from there.
Yeah. So essentially, for example, if you're married and your income is below 23,000, your tax rate is actually 0. You won't pay anything.
Yeah.
And if your income is less than 94,000, well, then the amount that you earn between that 23,000 and 94,000, if you're married, is only taxed at about 12%.
Yeah.
So you do the average rated tax for all of that, and it's not your marginal tax rate. It's far less, right? Once you average everything out, because as you alluded to, your effective tax rate is going to be lower because the first chunk is going to be nothing. The next chunk is going to be at 12%, and then only that incremental amount gets taxed at the higher amount.
Okay, so I want to because I'm jumping the gun a little bit. The Kamala Harris plan only applies to households with over $100 million in net worth. That's a to be determined big number, but we don't have there's a to be determined part there. So let's just jump to the top tax bracket. Where does this top tax bracket start, and what is it?
Well, okay, so just to put a little bit more context, you can earn $383,000 in a household from income and still pay only $24,000 as your marginal tax rate. That marginal tax rate jumps to over 37% on each incremental dollar once you hit $731,000.
Okay, so married filing jointly, $731K, income over that's taxed at 37%.
Yeah, so it tops out at 37%. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm making $10 million a year on my $100 million net worth, then 90% of that's going to be taxed at 37%.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. Yeah, and
if that's ordinary income.
Exactly, assuming it's from a position that you're getting a wage from, for example.
The CEO's salary that's paid in cash will pay a lot in that highest max tax rate.
Yeah, that's paid in wages, or as we'll soon find out, a non-optimally structured CEO salary will end up paying.
A lot of CEOs don't get paid a huge cash salary,
right?
And instead get paid a lot in stock of some sort.
So, right. What is Berkshire's or Warren Buffett's salary for Berkshire? I think it's $100K. Something.
Yeah.
You can understand why, right? The tax rate on income as it comes from ordinary income, meaning a wage, is pretty high. It tops out at 37% at the federal level.
So now I'm going to kind of lead you along. What are some of the capital gains tax rates?
Okay, so capital gains tax rates come in two flavors, right? Short-term and long-term. And again, this is only realized gains. So that's the first big caveat. Only after you sell something. And the two flavors are if it's a short-term capital gain, meaning you held the position for less than a year, then it's actually taxed at that higher marginal tax rate. For the CEO, for example, 37%.
Yeah.
Not ideal. However, if the gain is determined to be long term, you held it for more than a year, 366 days, then the tax rate drops. It drops considerably. The CEO will pay closer to 20%. With caveats.
Yeah. So it's at 10%. If you like income's under 50K, but that CEO, we're gonna do. So over 250 gets up to 20%, and over 400K is that adding the 3.8% Medicare circuit tax, the net investment income tax. So again, it's like a long-term capital gains tax for a CEO of 23.8. Does that sound right?
Yeah, if we're assuming a large amount. So
yeah,
for most people, again, if you're less than 94,000 and you're married, it's actually zero.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
If you're in the bulk of between 94,000 and about 583,000, then it's only 15%. So that's the 15% number you probably hear most people talk about when they talk about long-term capital gains, because most people are in that window when they're thinking about gains.
That's probably still a discount on their marginal or even their effective tax rate on their wages.
Oh, yeah.
Because their marginal tax rate is probably getting close to 35, but their effective is going to be in the low to mid 20s, something like 21 to 25% would be my guess. So that 15% is still saving them on taxes by having long-term capital gains rather than wages.
Yeah. So already we're noticing something a little fishy here. Why is it 15% and not closer to the marginal income tax rate for people who have a job and have a wage?
So I'm gonna push back on the fishy part. Maybe I don't know yet, but I'm not going to allow you to just drop that in at this stage of the conversation. But right now, vast majority of people, long-term capital gains tax rates are lower than what they would pay on wages.
They are, yeah, by a good amount.
Even at the CEO level, 23.8% on long-term capital gains is going to be less than the 37% that they would pay on their wages that they were paid in cash instead of stock held for a year.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of caveat like that. If the CEO is just paid in stock and the stock never appreciates and there's no gain, they'll still kind of end up paying that as wages, kind of. When it comes to how the stock is granted, like whether it's options versus shares, when it comes to so it's not just because they're paid in stock, it automatically becomes long-term capital gains. So it's not a perfect, they'll definitely play out. But there are also really complex things like carry at venture capital firms where the employees can be paid out a portion of the company's gain so that all the employees within that hedge fund or that venture capital firm can get that long-term capital gains. There's other ways to play around with that.
Well, here's the fish. You're looking for the fish, and you found some.
Okay, so can you quickly describe? Okay, a CEO gets paid $20 million. That's their market rate. They get to decide how they get paid. What's not as suboptimal as being paid $20 million in cash?
Well, yeah, you would want essentially what we're driving at is the more income that an individual can say came from long-term capital gains, the better, right? And that's where these strategies come into play. Meaning there's ways to structure income such that you gear more of that income into the long-term capital gains bucket through various means, as you alluded to, carried interest or RSUs or stock options, the gains on those, from the time that they're either exercised or granted, depending on the structure, can be deemed to be long-term in nature. So essentially, there's many things that are done within the sphere of compensation planning
Yeah.
to basically shift the scales of compensation towards the long-term capital gains bucket, because 37% is much higher than 23.8%. And just one little caveat, I want to explain the 23.8, because if people Google it, they may see long-term capital gains capping out at 20%. But then there's an extra add-on of 3.8% if you have more than 250K of income, known as the net investment income tax. Just like a little, hey, let's raise this a little bit more to get to something that's closer to fair. Maybe that's why it was done.
No, that was the nickname's the Obamacare surtax.
Yeah,
where that's kind of funding a lot of the health insurance subsidies for people under a certain income. I think there's a cliff around 60K. I haven't checked in a few years, but if you make less than 60K, your health insurance will be paid for if you're going through one of the government subsidized plans. So like you can get free health insurance, and it's funded from that net investment income tax.
Yeah.
Kind
I
of
don't
like
know if I want to open.
yeah, it's like it's not direct like that happens the same thing. Like this is part of like is getting into the politics of like how do we sell this kind of thing. So like, but
yeah, there's this whole fungibility discussion as it relates to money. Well,
yeah,
okay.
does the money from that tax go here? No, it kind of goes into here along with lots of other stuff, and then this also comes here. So like, yeah, that's definitely part of the discussion today.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to be prescribed meaning to why taxes are here, but just looking at it, from a big picture standpoint, it should be patent that wages are taxed at a higher rate than capital gains, pound for pound.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
So, do you have a quick description of the Kamala Harris plan to tax unrealized gains?
Right. Yeah. Well, I just want to close the loop on that, though. Unrealized gains are taxed at zero, right? Because they're not realized yet. So just so that we're very clear, the 23.8% that the CEO pays on his 10 million of gains is zero until he realizes it, meaning that taxes that he would have paid gets pushed forward into the future.
Yeah. Do we want to get into like the borrow until you die strategy, or?
Well, so there's a strategy. Sure, we can mention it, right?
I don't want to go too deep in this, but like, if you never sell the stock, if you never sell the asset, you never pay you never realize the gains, you never pay real capital gains taxes.
Yeah,
you can use as collateral to borrow against to support your lifestyle, even to actually pay your bills. You got to buy the second house, got to buy the vacation home, you got to buy the yacht.
Yeah.
And theoretically, if the growth on that asset is greater than the interest assessed on the borrowing, your net worth still goes up.
Yeah.
Then when you die, you get a step up in basis.
Yeah.
So there's no longer an unrealized gain. That basis steps up to that value at death.
There's no gain either. Yeah.
No capital gains tax.
Yeah.
Sell it, then pay off the debt that you've accumulated throughout your entire life. And so theoretically, it's possible at those levels to never pay capital gains taxes because you never realize the gain.
Yeah, so you got your cake and you ate it as well, meaning you were able to get income in air quotes, right, from the value of this asset that has been going up over your lifetime.
You're able to use this asset to support your lifestyle.
Right, and the government, in theory, could have received zero in capital gains tax from this investment. Yeah,
they would get estate taxes, which at that level are likely, but that's a separate thing.
Yeah, but it is conceivable that somebody could have $10 million in gains and also be able to get some income out of this investment while they're still alive and still pay zero in capital gains tax.
Yes. Yeah.
Upon death. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I think it sounds fishy, but
Okay. So okay, let's quick primer on Kamala Harris's unrealized gains tax, and because I think that we need that context, because that it's not $10 million. This kind of thing.
Well, okay, so for me, this started with an article we mentioned maybe a year or two ago, the ProPublica article on
Like Warren
effective tax rate
yeah,
on billionaires, right?
how Warren Buffett's plays a lower tax rate than his secretary.
Yeah, so the and it had to do with unrealized gains as a large part of it.
Yeah.
The notion is, let's say Warren Buffett's net worth is 100 million. Sorry, 100 billion. Let's add a few zeros. Let's say, I'm using round numbers though. It's much higher than that. Let's say it was 100 billion last year, and now it's 110 billion this year because Berkshire Hathaway went up 10%, right?
Yeah.
So he has $10 billion in unrealized gains. What's his tax rate that he pays, or how much tax does he pay that year? Well, it's unrealized, so close to nothing, right?
Yeah.
And effectively, if you kind of work through the math by deferring the payment of taxes into the future, what you're doing is you're taking that tax money and not handing it over to the government. You're keeping it and you're letting it compound on your end. You're letting that tax money grow in your pocket until it's finally time to pay it off at the end.
Yeah.
And by that point, the amount that you save by deferring your taxes can be quite incredible through the power of compounding. And what this effectively does is it reduces the tax burden on the ultra wealthy by a considerable amount, especially because they don't need to realize their gains, or they don't need to realize a vast majority of their gains to live.
It's really hard to spend $1 billion to support your lifestyle.
Yeah, and it's really hard to spend 10 billion, right? Or it might be closer to 50 or 100 billion, in a given year for some of these cases. So a large part of it is deferred and not taxed. And what that means is, for an individual who somehow goes out there and creates $10 billion in wages, they don't have that option. Even if they don't plan on spending that 10 billion, they got to pay tax on it. And again, the question is why? Like, why have this huge benefit for the ultra wealthy that can't be translated to a similar benefit to people who actually have jobs that generate income and are paid wages because of that income?
Yeah.
So that's where the Kamala Harris tax plan comes into play. It realizes maybe there's something not quite right here in our tax code. The fact that you can create billions in wealth and not be taxed on it, or defer taxes and allow the deferment in taxes to accumulate so that your effective tax rate at the end of the day is much lower than somebody earning an income.
Mm-hmm.
So what the plan, and there may be many versions of this and maybe many iterations that change from here, but a high level notion of the plan is maybe we should tax unrealized gains in some capacity. And the Forbes article alludes to the notion that the Kamala Harris plan would tax unrealized gains for individuals who have a net worth of 100 million or more.
Yeah.
So what that means specifically, for example, assuming the tax code stays similar, all else being equal, sort of, kind of, is, let's say you have the CEO who has a net worth of 100 million, and his net worth increases by 10 million through unrealized capital gains, 110 million. Mm-hmm. In today's world, he would pay zero in tax on that 10 million in gains until he actually sells it, if he ever does, right? Mm-hmm. But now he would pay taxes on that 10 million in gains at the 3.8 roughly percent on most of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those with over 100 million, taxing that that unrealized gain. And the first question I have is, like, does this happen every year? And I appreciate you pointing out probably, but also it would likely reset his basis at actually, would it reset? Assuming it's all in one company stock.
Yeah.
Let's make this easy. He gets to 110 million.
Yeah.
He pays 2.5 million in taxes.
Yeah.
Do you think his basis is 110 million or 107.5?
I would assume it's 110 because
Okay.
it would kind of be like he sells it for 100. You're forced to sell it and buy back immediately at the same price.
Okay.
Right?
I kind of like that. So
that's probably what it would be.
It's at 107. So kind of like that next. Well, no.
Essentially, it went up to 110. The government said, "Okay, quickly sell it and buy back and realize those gains and pay the taxes on the difference."
Okay. Yeah. So if it grows from 107.5 back to 110, there is a new little gain there.
Well, okay, so it's still at 110 technically. The market value per share is still $110. Kind
of like, but we have to say if that's his only asset is this company stock, he only has 107.5 because 2.5 million went to the government.
That's true with any investment, though, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, but if it stays flat from one year to the next, there's no gain, so he doesn't owe another unrealized gains tax the following year.
Yeah, and effectively, what it would mean also, in theory, is let's say it went down by 10 million. Well, you would have a $10 million loss that you can put on your books each year to offset future gains. So it's not the end of the world.
That's actually that doesn't come up with it. Like that's a good point. Of so first thought, you know what? That does make it kind of fairer. That if you have that loss, it's going to kind of like you're forcing that like the unrealized loss now becomes forced to be realized. So like that. Yeah. So it kind of you book that loss to carry forward. Second thought is like, oh man, that is so ripe for manipulation.
You can imagine, yeah. So in a future life, I was a futures trader, right, with futures contracts, and basically these are derivative instruments that are tied to some movement of an underlying, like the price of corn or whatever. And I did financial futures, which are tied to the price of equity prices or other types of financial instruments. And interestingly enough, when you buy and sell these instruments, they have their own set of tax where even if you buy it and sell it the next day, it's not 100% short term. It was actually a 60-40 split between short term and long term. I hope it's not 40-60. One of the two. Okay. The notion is it's not 100% short term. And it's not 100% long term, regardless of your holding period. It's actually 60-40.
And that has to do because it's a futures contract that settles, I'm guessing, over a year from now or something like that.
Well, it has to do with this notion of mark to market. So the positions are mark to market every day, and based upon that, you balance out your risk and your hedges and your margins and all that on a daily basis. And so that they do have. I don't know why specifically, but basically they have everything they need to be able to tax it on a per day, on a incremental basis. So they do. Yeah.
Okay. So households net worth over 100 million. We're now going to tax unrealized gains. Okay.
Yeah.
And
it's
kind of like
the proposal.
If you sold everything and then bought it back, you realized the gain. So that's kind of the way it translates.
Yeah, and I think there's two underlying rationales for why this might make sense. One is if you think the tax code should be progressive in nature, meaning the more wealthy you are, or the more income you generate, the higher your tax rate should be, then something like this makes sense. Because currently, it's not that way. It's basically the richer you are, the more likely you are to have income through capital gains, especially unrealized capital gains, the lower your tax rate is.
Yeah, which is that's the theory behind the current federal tax bracket. That was the theory when the income tax system came to be. Yeah. That as your income went up, you paid a higher rate, and there's been enough loopholes and manipulation and other ways to take advantage of the tax code that now CEOs don't get paid in cash; they get paid in stock.
Yeah. So now effectively the more income you get, the more the more wealthy you are, the more income you get through these means that are have a lower tax rate.
Yeah.
On an effective basis. The
Okay.
second thing to realize, I just want to throw this one tidbit in there. The second reason why a plan like this might make sense is maybe largely driven or largely contributed by the fact that our tax system is more regressive in nature, right? Is that income inequality has been increasing over time.
Yeah.
You can imagine if you're wealthy and you're paying a lower tax rate, you can accelerate beyond everybody else. We've talked about this in many other contexts, but you can see if your tax rates are lower, you have more money to invest in lower tax rates. So you will speed away from people who are burdened with higher tax rates, who have no choice to earn their income through wages.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's time to get to that Forbes article. And again, we'll put a link so you can kind of review this. As we're going through some of the bullet points, I had a few examples that I want you to keep in mind, especially as it relates to some of these things. Okay.
Yeah.
These are examples of households with over $100 million and how this might affect them. One example, we'll go with Jerry Jones. Do you happen to know who Jerry Jones is?
No.
Jerry Jones is the owner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay. Oh, well then, yes. I didn't.
Okay. Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys, that franchise is worth somewhere on the scale of $8 to $12 billion because it's an illiquid asset. There's no market for them. Forbes magazine itself does a valuation of these sports franchises each year. So it really is a guess, but we can never know until we try to sell it. But it's a single illiquid asset idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Next example, we'll go with the Waltons. So these are the heirs of the Walmart empire. So each one of them has inherited billions of dollars, most of it in Walmart stock. So it's now again, we do have a really good market for what their valuation is. It was inherited. It's mostly this one stock. It's spread out among a few of them. So very, very liquid, easy to sell enough shares, easy to value, inherited asset. Okay? Next example, we go with the kind of Elon Musk / Mark Zuckerberg. So they built up this company that has now, because most of their net worth is in the company they built, they now have net worths of many, many billions of dollars, but it also is publicly traded at this point. And so single asset, they built the company, they got all the rewards from building that company, but again, liquid asset, easy to value. And the last one, we'll go with kind of an owner of, let's say, many apartment buildings or chain of retail stores. Before Sports Authority went bankrupt, Sports Authority was still not publicly traded. So you can imagine there's probably restaurateurs who have a chain of restaurants. They have enough pieces to get their net worth over $100 million. They don't own a singular asset, but they kind of manage a lot of these assets, and these assets generate income, but not all that. A decent amount of that income will flow through to the owner, whether it's depending on their tax status, most likely a C Corp in this example, but it's not publicly traded. So each individual unit is still kind of illiquid, also hard to sell. You can't sell the apartment building very well or even sell a portion of it. It's hard to sell one singular store. So net worth easily over $100 million, could even be $1 billion to make it kind of give us some extra leeway. They do get some income via wages, but they also get just the value of these companies and the real estate going up. So there's also unrealized gains. But again, hard to value, illiquid, but not a singular asset. Like like the sports franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be our kind of examples of households that could have net worths over $100 million. And as we go through these bullet points, we'll kind of go through all of them first. We'll kind of come back to how that might affect the different ways that the ultra wealthy got ultra wealthy.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Let me share the screen and we can kind of run down these different examples. Okay, so let's see. Screen 2. Okay, so is that big enough, Aaron?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. And here we are in the corner. So the title is Unrealized Gains Tax is Capital Punishment. So you can imagine here that the contributor is not a fan of this motion to tax unrealized capital gains. So many of the bullet points, or basically all the bullet points that we're going to be talking through, are the contributor's critique of why this idea is not good. Why taxing unrealized capital gains is a poor idea. So let's see. Let's see. The first argument is the slippery slope argument. Basically, I'll just read it. The criticism or the problem with taxing unrealized gains is once the mechanism for collecting this tax from the ultra wealthy is established, it would inevitably be extended to people of lower net worth.
Okay. So it's really easy to change 100 million down to 50 million.
Yeah, you just change one line of code, right? Yep. One line of tax code, and you can make it zero, right? Tax everyone.
Anyone over $1 million now pays unrealized capital gains.
Yeah, or just everyone, right? Just make everybody pay. So now let's talk about this because.
So real quick, do you want to go bullet point by bullet point, or like list them all and come back?
Oh, I was thinking maybe just bullet point by bullet point.
Okay. So what is okay? I like this. So what is your immediate thought when you see that slippery slope?
Okay, so a few things. I think it's worth mentioning why aren't we taxing unrealized capital gains to begin with? Like, why is this a thing? And a good part of it is it's hard to do, right? Because they're unrealized, and even before the stock market, you might say, "Wait, I got to figure out the value of all of my possessions every single year." Add it up, figure out the value last year, figure out the difference. It's complicated. And to burden every single person to do that would be quite cumbersome. You'd literally have to double the tax code or something to put this into effect. So you can imagine it's been a pretty good talking point to say, hey, this is too hard. Let's tax people other ways. It doesn't matter if the tax code is regressive and income inequality is increasing. This is too hard. Let's not cross this bridge, right?
And again, it comes to like, how much is a building worth if you don't sell it?
Yeah, it's not easy.
We can make okay guesses, but there's not enough of a market. And so as you get kind of more and more singular, Forbes has a range of like $4 billion on the value of the Dallas Cowboys. And so unless he sells, like, we're taking the sales of other very illiquid assets to make a guess.
Yeah.
So
here's my take on that. Effectively, this happens once in someone's life when they die, meaning their entire state is valued and assessed for taxes based upon the net worth of an individual state around the time of death.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually, if the owner, Lewis, what's
Jerry Jones?
Jerry Jones. Would have pissed off a lot of Cowboys fans. Nice guy.
Okay, there's more people who hate the Cowboys than like the Cowboys. So you're probably
maybe we'll get more subscribers than we'll lose. Okay, so let's say Jones passes away. Well, he doesn't have to. His estate doesn't have to sell the Dallas Cowboys. However, they have to go through a process of valuing the Cowboys to figure out the value to assess the tax that might be owed on his estate.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a procedure in place to figure out the value of estates for all different types of investments that an estate may hold, including all the examples that you just talked about of the different types of businesses or entities that an individual may have. Now, the notion here is it's done once, but the rules are there, right? We know how to do it once. And effectively, I'd say let's lean on those rules and make it efficient so that we could do that each year. Now, it is cumbersome to do it just once. It's not easy. So that's why applying it to 100 million household and above is more sensible, because you don't want every individual person to have to figure out the price or the market value of his Toyota to figure out how much tax he owes or doesn't owe, right?
That's a bad example, because I think that's an appreciating asset. So this actually does happen. Recently, the owner of the Chiefs passed away, Lamar Hunt. He had owned it since it started in 1959. And they had to figure out, how does his family pay the estate tax on this singular asset?
So the notion here is there's ways to do it, but the question is, what is our will, right? Mm-hmm. Are we comfortable living with a regressive tax code? Are we comfortable with inequality increasing? Or might it be worth it to explore this idea as a potential avenue to make things more sensible with our tax code in terms of fairness, right? And in my mind, any change to the tax code could be a slippery slope by some means. But at the end of the day, you have two main things to worry about when it comes to taxes. You have spending that you have to do, and you have to figure out how you're going to tax individuals to cover that spending. Now, maybe there is some argument that whenever the government has the ability to tax, they'll just spend more. I think that's a separate issue that has to be targeted separately.
Okay.
Just so, because,
I want to kind of make sure we get. I don't have time to get to all the points. So you're saying the slippery slope is like a will versus way kind of thing.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not as worried about the slippery slope, in part because it requires another act of Congress to change it. And yes, like you said, once the means are in place, it's just changing a line of code. But we have seen throughout kind of congressional history, it's more likely nothing happens. And you might see more families get caught at that $100 million number just due to inflation. And it stays at $100 million for a decade and captures people who were at the 60 to 90 million at the beginning. And then, like we saw with the estate tax, Congress this captures more people than we intended. We're going to bump this up. Get back to the roughly 10,000 centimillionaires in the U.S. I think that is more likely than they lower it from 100 million down to 50 million. Because we haven't seen an example where the estate tax was intentionally lowered to capture more people. There's been sunsets, and estate tax, and that actually comes up in 2025. Estate tax goes up, but we got approval in 2015 for this tax law to last 10 years, and then we have to make a change before 2025. So it's not an intentional coming back down. It's the increase goes away kind of thing. I don't think I've seen an example where Congress is intentionally trying to capture more people with something like this.
Well, my personal take is it should come back to what is our goal, right? If our goal is to have a progressive tax system, then we should put measures in place to make it that way.
Okay.
And if the goal isn't, then fine, leave it how it is, right? No need to change a thing. But there's plenty of.
So you're saying it doesn't matter if we do 100 million or 10 million, because it's already so far out on the just the curve of the population that going from 0.01% of the population to 0.1% of the population, that part doesn't matter.
Yeah, or just to be very clear about it, income should be taxed there should be an income tax, or there should be taxes on income if we want to fund our government, right? There's nothing we can do if we want these things, that our government has to do. If we don't want our government to do those things, that's a different story. But let's assume we agree upon a certain amount of things the government needs to do. Well, now that's going to require funding, and you got to get that funding from taxes. Okay, now that we have a funding requirement, how are we going to tax people? Well, in my mind, it makes sense to tax people with a progressive tax system.
Okay.
And if we're going to have a progressive tax system, then we have to look at our current tax system and say, where are the gaps? And as long as there are gaps, I feel like it makes sense to narrow those gaps.
So when it comes to slippery slope, I'm saying I'm not concerned at all. And you're saying bring it on.
I'd say bring it on to the point where things are more fair.
Okay.
Like, who would be against that? I don't want it to be more fair.
That might come down to like net worths of $1 million.
It could, yeah. But, we have to answer this question as a society. Do we want the tax system to be fair or not?
Okay.
That's my point. Like, what do we want? If we don't want it to be fair, fine. But if we do, you got to make decisions that make it more fair.
Okay. Next bullet point.
Okay. Valuation. He summarizes the problems up here. So I might be scrolling up and down as we go through this.
Okay.
Valuation. The problem here is the price of an asset is unknowable before it is sold, and the government would be incentivized to manipulate valuations to the upside by the desire for tax revenue. Okay, so let's see.
This one, we have many examples of private companies who use different accounting rules to value their company at lower than what it would sell for. I think this is the I don't want to say the one I'm worried about the least, but no, sorry. I acknowledge it's difficult. The examples I gave, the retail stores or the sports franchise, it is difficult for those valuations. I'm not worried about the valuation coming in too high. We see this with private companies. Again, a lot of my experience with tech employees that are pre-IPO, the 409A value they have to update every 18 months. That's what we use for measuring the fair market value of the company. Like, this is an accounting basis rather than a market value of if the company was sold. This consistently is lower than what the value of the company could sell for. And this happens all the time. So I acknowledge it's difficult. I don't think the 100 millionaires or even anyone is more likely to be hurt because of margin of error in valuation.
Yeah, well, I think, the first line here in the valuation argument is, how can one accurately value the assets that haven't been sold? ? It is impossible to do so. And that's just not true, because you have to do that when somebody dies. And there's laws in place to figure out how to do that properly. I mean, it exists. People do it all the time, every day.
So, yes, private companies have valuations. They have to have a balance sheet for accounting purposes.
For every single type of asset, there's a way to evaluate, even if it isn't sold. And that code already exists as part of the tax code. Yes. It's already there, because when you die, that's what you have to do.
It's honestly like, talk to an accountant. Like this is what they do all the time. Yeah. Now, again, you could get into just assets minus liabilities equals the value of the company. Mm-hmm. But as we've seen, especially with Trump claiming his name has value and he will lease out the Trump brand to other hotel chains, that is admittedly hard for an accountant to value. And maybe we have some margin of error there. But again, because we're going to do this every year, if our margin of error was too low, then okay, we'll pay it the next year kind of thing. We actually have better data the next year, something like that.
Yeah. I guess my point is we just do it. It's already here. It's part of our process it's part of our tax code. It's done, even though it's hard to do. And, the other point is this currently applies to 100 million above, meaning we're not talking about the coin collection of, or the painting from grandma, right? We're talking about large estates here.
Correct. But I think I want to, because in a few minutes, I'm going to combine a couple. I think that you and I are capable of keeping these together. So that, like, in this case, the valuation plus the slippery slope, if you're okay if it goes down to $1 million, then we could be getting into grandma's painting that you inherited.
We could, we got to be cognizant of the fact as we lower it. I'm assuming they're going to lower it because I'm giving the author the benefit of the doubt that they will.
I am not, but I acknowledge that we're trying to keep our logical coherence.
Yeah. Well, again, we mentioned that that CEO that earns $10 million a year is already paying less in tax.
Yes.
If most of it's for capital gains. So there's already a inequality there when it comes to progressive taxation at these lower levels.
Yes. So I do like that your premise that you're coming from this. If we're trying to make a progressive tax system, that kind of trumps these small nitpicking items.
Yeah, and there's ways to do it that can soften the bureaucracy, but that's up to the IRS and the tax code and how they want to structure this. Yeah. For example, they do that all the time with other types of exemptions, so they can do that for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Liquidity. Was there any other points in this?
So we did valuation liquidity.
Okay, liquidity. So the concern there is taxpayers would be forced to liquidate assets in order to pay tax on unrealized gains. These liquidations would destroy wealth for other people who own shares of the same asset or other assets in the same class.
Okay, so here we're doing so I actually see liquidity as the sports franchise or the chain of retail stores, which is actually hard to sell those. He actually talks about the Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, which actually it's the most liquid type of asset. Yeah. And his example is if Elon Musk has to sell 1 billion shares, it's going to drop the share price for all of the shareholders across all shareholders lose value when Elon Musk has to pay this tax because he's so concentrated. That I'm not that like the ups and downs in the market happen all the time. If I think there'll be some reversion to the mean. That I'm less worried about because if they hold so much in that stock, then they also have to sell it to pay some of that. But also, that's not that's why there's income inequality because he has so much in this single company. And so if it gets spread out a little bit, I'm okay with that. But also, there's like so many other ups and downs in the market that aren't related to the owner selling shares that feels like it's going to be noise. I'm actually more concerned about the illiquid assets, which I'm surprised he doesn't mention. How does that owner of the apartment building or like 100 apartment buildings, how do they come up with the tax like that? I'm not worried, but like I'd like to think that out. I don't have an immediate solution that comes to mind, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. The tricky part is there's a lot to say here. I don't want to rush the point too much, but I do want to make a good case of why this isn't a big concern either.
Okay.
Because I've heard this said in other talking points that counter this proposal. And I feel like there's enough to say about why, from a taxation perspective and an economic perspective on why it's not a big concern. But one thing I'll lay out, for example, is let's go back to that $100 million net worth individual. He has 10% gains, 110 million. He pays tax of 20% on that. So that's $2 million tax, right? That's 2% of his net worth, right? That gets taxed.
Yeah.
Or, let's say he just owned Tesla. So basically 2% of his holding of Tesla would have to be sold, right? Something like that.
So that's why
cover the tax.
Okay, so I want to distinguish the illiquid owners, again, sports franchise, singular asset, the apartment buildings. So they have multiple stores, but do they or a chain of retail stores, something like that, or a chain of restaurants, versus the Tesla owners. And that's the Waltons. The Waltons, they're gonna have to sell some Walmart stock.
Yeah, so I'm starting with the liquid, and then we'll get to the illiquid. So with the liquid, you got to sell the stock if that's all you have. Maybe you receive dividends of, let's say, 2%, right? That's the dividends roughly on the S&P. Well, there's your tax money, right? Right there. But let's say it was a stock like Berkshire Hathaway, where they don't have dividends. Now you got to sell some Berkshire. Here's the tricky part. Let's say you did sell Berkshire and Berkshire did fall. Now, did the profitability of Berkshire change because you had to sell it?
Exactly. That's exactly yes. The fundamentals of the stock don't change. I agree completely. Yes, thank you.
Did it impact the way that business is run at all?
That's what I was trying to get to with the just emotional ups and downs in the market of all the random reasons why stocks go up or down that have nothing to do.
Just logically, why would that reduce the price of the stock? And if it did, that would be a buying opportunity. Meaning now the stock is priced lower than it should be because the stock is still earning the same amount of money that it used to.
I completely agree with this. That was, you did a better job of succinctly phrasing that. It's the company is still should be worth the same amount.
Yeah.
And all the ups and downs we see in the market are either emotional or irrational responses to news, response to various inputs, response to earnings. We see these ups and downs all the time, even if the earnings for the company are exactly the same from one quarter to the next.
Right. And then, we're also assuming somehow that everybody sells on the same exact day. Why would they do that? This is coming up. Part of efficient tax planning, if you have $100 million, is smoothing out your tax burden over the year, right? So you would make the sales slowly over the year as you realize those
if anything,
unrealized realized gains.
You would sell a day or a week before the date that you choose for valuation. You can drive down, if this was true, you can drive down your own valuation.
Yeah, so from an efficient market standpoint, it doesn't make much sense. Now, there is something that might happen, though, with stocks. The valuation of stocks across the board may go down because the burden on stocks is higher, right? Maybe that does have a one-time impact when this passes. So that could potentially happen.
So I think we start getting into what percentage of the population owns this stock market kind of thing. Yeah. Because again, we're talking about 10,000 people, and I did the math. It's 0.00025% of the U.S. population.
Sure.
And,
yeah.
And so, but how much of the U.S. wealth is held by these 10,000 people? And again, back to that wealth inequality question. I think that's the thing we're directly trying to address. We're directly trying to reduce the wealth inequality.
Two things, though. So we mentioned 10,000, but basically that number comes from that's roughly the amount of 100 millionaire plus people in the U.S. But this author's concern is that it's not necessarily only going to affect those 10,000, but forcing people to sell will lead to market disruptions. Let's see. I won't paraphrase him. I'll just read it. Forced liquidation would create unintended consequences that extend far beyond the initially targeted individuals, destabilizing markets and affecting a broad range of people from all walks of life. So basically, it's going to impact a bunch of us dramatically, which I don't agree with based upon the rationale we put forward.
I don't either. It's Elon Musk. He owns enough of Tesla, he doesn't own enough of the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
And even if all these people, like they still don't own enough of the U.S. economy. And if they do, that's a problem.
Right.
Like they shouldn't own so much of the U.S. economy that they can make that kind of impact.
Yeah, it might be like the too big to fail argument. Like, let's subsidize banks al infinitum, because if they fail, then all of us will hurt, even though they did a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
Right. That's encouraging great behavior there.
Okay, we're getting pretty long here, and I know we're getting pretty amped up, and I don't want to discount this, so I want to make sure we get to these. Oh wait, what was your thing on illiquid assets?
Okay, so illiquid assets is probably the bigger sticking point in this whole conversation, right? What do you do if you have this one asset and it doesn't produce income that you could use to pay the asset, but it's the only thing you got, and you got $100 million? What are you going to do? Yeah, well, in my mind, this is the one category where, it might suck, right?
I appreciate your bluntness.
It is. Well, what are you going to do, though? Do you want a fair taxation system, or do you want to say it's too hard for this person who has $100 million to come up with the money because they might need to sell some of their family business that they've held on for generations? Therefore, we want a regressive tax system that burdens everybody else uncontrollably more.
In practice, so like when some of the sports franchises have sold, they have to pay a state tax. They allow other investors to buy 1 or 2 or 3 to 5% of the asset. So they're able to kind of liquidate a little, pay the estate tax, but they still keep controlling interest.
Yeah.
So there is a method in practice, like you said. Like there's a way to value these illiquid assets. There's a way to come up with the money.
Right. There is a way. There's a path. It's there. It can be done. For some people, they might not like it as much as for other people, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it if we think it's the right path to go down.
I think we'll for the store owners, we would see either they're going to try and pay themselves out a little more. They might allow investors. Like once you get to net worths that high, it's not that common that it's only your money that's illiquid. Like there's usually small consortiums, if you get to limited partnerships. So there are ways to sell off the 1 or 2% that you need to get the liquidity without giving up the control.
Yeah, you know how there's first world problems. These are 100 million air problems.
These are the 0.00001% problems. Not even just 1% problems. Like we're getting like very few people. So yeah, you got $100 million, mostly liquid. You got to figure it out. But it's okay. You can afford a CPA and an attorney.
Right. You'll have to do some tax planning, right, to measure this.
Okay. Asset inflation.
Okay, so the concern. How many more of these are there? 1, 2, 3, 4 more. 4 more. All right. Here we go. So number 4, asset inflation. A tax on unrealized gains gives those with influence over monetary policy the power to directly compensate the property of private citizens. Oh boy, that sounds bad. Let's see.
Okay, so this, I think, is saying like, okay, the Fed so it's COVID again. Fed lowers rates down to 0 and is increasing liquidity, driving up asset prices, and so pushing people to higher net worths, and then they have to pay taxes on that.
Oh boy!
So one, I think the Fed has done okay at being independent. Not great, but I think it's done okay. 2, we're complaining that their net worth is higher. That like because of government interactions, their net worth is higher. And again, every time I talk to a client, you're always better off seeing the stock go up dramatically, and your tax bill also goes up because you always make more money. You always make more if your assets go up and your tax bill goes up. You gain even more than that because there's no tax over. Like even if the tax is 90%, like you still make more. But realistically, the tax, I think I'll say under 50. That's my guess. But like, yes, in this scenario, asset inflation, we've increased the net worth of the 100 millionaire plus to get more tax revenue. They still gain more.
Well, so there's two scenarios here, right? They increase their net worth, but after you adjust for inflation, their net worth is lower, right? I think that's a concern here because he talks about inflation, right?
Okay.
I'm going to address both anyway. So,
but in general, stocks have done a really good job outpacing inflation. We do see, as inflation rises, asset prices also increase, and like a lot of the economic theory when it comes to like stock returns is real return. It's the 5 to 6 to 7% over inflation. So if inflation's 1, we expect a nominal return of 7 or 8. If inflation's 3, we're expecting 10. If inflation's 5 or 6, we expect a stock return of 12 to 13. Like again, it's not a like every year by year basis, but those correlate pretty well.
Well, so I'm trying to figure out which direction to poke holes in this because you can do it from both sides.
Okay.
So on the one hand, what you're saying is right. In general, when inflation happens, stocks generally outpace inflation. The quick and dirty is if there's inflation, then companies will charge more for their products, and basically they'll have to pay out more in wages and salaries, but the more they'll be charging more to cover the amount they have to pay out.
And on that, like leverage, like any fixed borrowing stays flat. That's fixed borrowings tend to be hurt by inflation. And so if you have a house and your mortgage payment stays flat, but your house value increases, you make out. So like inflation benefits you. And a lot of companies do use some kind of borrowing, and that's why their equity is assets minus liabilities. And so pretty consistently, I'd say most larger companies benefit from inflation more than they're hurt.
Yeah. And we've talked about this in detail in other contexts. We don't need to drill down on it too much, but if you're really concerned, just open up any Google charts or whatever, plot the stock market, plot inflation, and you'll see a big differential there. That's exponential nature. Okay, but the concern though is the government may start causing this inflation, which will help the wealthy, but it could hurt everybody else, right? Because now everybody else's wealth is going down because they're not protected by owning stocks, right? My money's in the bank, and now it's worth less and less each year. So could the government be doing this to increase the rate of inflation purposefully so that they get more revenue to essentially hurt everybody else? Okay, so here's the notion, right? We've talked about how the Fed has a target inflation rate.
Yeah.
When inflation rate is above that rate, then they constrict the money supply. When it's lower, they release the money supply. That's their target or mandate. What the author is saying here is they may perpetually target a higher inflation rate so that they can earn more money.
But again, that helps that's directly counter to everything else in this article.
Maybe the author is trying to say it's going to help the rich people, but it's going to hurt everybody else if they did this. Maybe that's part of it. My concern is it's also going to hurt the government. Like, imagine the government creates inflation. Now they also have to pay more money on
Social Security benefit. Like, everyone collecting Social Security loves seeing that 8% increase.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not worried about this one. Let's move on.
I guess we gotta move on. I guess my point is, if the government wants to print more money, they can do so anyway. Like,
yes,
they don't need
exactly. They don't need this tax and this mechanism.
They're allowed to do it. They can do it. They have plenty of means to do it. And they do it.
Yeah.
And if they go above that target, then it sucks for all of us. That's true. And it would still suck for all of us.
Okay. Capital flight.
A capital flight. Wealthy people have resources to minimize their exposure from any form of wealth tax by moving to a new jurisdiction en masse. It happened before, it would happen again. Okay, so this is the notion of, if we tax the rich too much, they'll take their money and run.
They'll move to a different country.
They'll hoard it and whatnot.
So I got two ways to go here. One, other countries also have income taxes. Then that was used to pay for public services, including things like police, and court systems, and ways to kind of help protect them from bad actors. So if you're going to a country with a lower tax rate, are you giving up some of those protections? So that's like, again, I'm being very generic, painting with a broad brush kind of thing. So, and I know that I don't want to be stereotyping, but it's like, there are nice things in the United States that are kind of worth paying taxes for.
Yeah.
So one, like, the places they would go might not be attractive, even if it saves them money on taxes.
Yeah.
Two, these people already have enough money to live wherever they want. And they're choosing to live in the United States already. If the tax rate went up on, let's say, estate taxes or capital gains taxes, if everything went up 2%, would they move? I don't think so. They're already choosing to live in the United States. And this actually, for me, adds to the liquidity side. The Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, is their net worth going to grow as much when the companies they manage, which are in the US, and they're no longer here? I think most stockholders in the stock market would kind of look down upon that and say, hey, if you're not going to be there to manage the company, I don't think the company will be as profitable. The Jerry Jones, he's not moving the Dallas Cowboys. It's like, yes, he could move, but he's not moving the Dallas Cowboys. So, like, again, and the same thing with the illiquid assets on the apartment buildings or the chain of stores. Like, they're already here in the U.S. Are you going to disassociate that from the means that produce your wealth?
Yeah.
Someone like the Waltons, who in here, like, they have the assets, again, they could already move to one of those other jurisdictions, and they're choosing to stay here. I don't think the taxes have any impact on where these people decide to live. I think it's just, do you like living in the United States? Because I'm a little biased. I think it's awesome living in the United States.
Well, so there was that Facebook founder, right, who gave up his citizenship and fled to maybe, was it Singapore, right? So it's done in certain situations because you can save tax by renouncing your citizenship, leaving the country, and you can do it. And this may encourage that. I think that's what this author is saying. This may encourage more of that. And that can certainly be true.
The Facebook founder went to Singapore before this tax existed. He didn't. So,
well, I think what he's saying is Facebook founder number 2 may have said, okay, I don't think there's enough burden for me to do it, but if this passes, then I'm gone. Right? That's what he's saying.
And I think that's another point. This is a marginal tax on the people of this wealth.
Yeah.
This is not taking their money.
Yeah.
It's taxing their unrealized gain.
Yeah.
They go from 100 million to 110 million.
Yeah.
And then we're taking it back down to 107.5. It's not taking someone from 100 million down to 90.
And the ironic part is it's not even still in this measure so far taxing them in a progressive fashion.
Correct.
Meaning It's just taxing gains that are already there at still the lower rate.
Yes.
And you would pay if those same gains were income from a wage. And, this comes back to my just overarching argument. Do we want a progressive tax system or not? And if we're saying that if the rich are going to leave if we have a progressive tax system, and we don't want that to happen, therefore it must be regressive. Okay, well, that's the choice we're making as a society today.
Yes.
But if we really want to be,
those people they want to live in the United States instead of living in Singapore.
Yeah. Well, my standpoint comes back to Will. If we want it to be fair and progressive in nature, then we have to make tough decisions. And this is one of them. Now, if we want to say, well, we're too worried about the rich leaving, and we're okay if the tax system is regressive in nature, then okay, that's what it is.
Yes.
So this is one of those situations where we have to decide, what do we want? What's sensible as a society? Do we want the rich to get richer in perpetuity? Or do we want people to have more of a fair shot?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this the last one? Capital punishment?
Two more.
Two more. Okay. Capital punishment. There's a saying that the government should tax what they want to see less of. As a purely behavior matter, a tax on capital accumulation discourages wealth building and the deferral of consumption. Okay.
So the idea is if you want people to drive less, you tax gas. And actually does seem to curb driving at a large enough scale. Yeah. Like you actually get your population to drive less by taxing gas.
Yeah.
Things like I think cigarettes have worked similarly. Trying to think of if there's any other examples that immediately come to mind. And the author is saying that this would discourage wealth building. Yeah.
So instituting capital punishment as an official policy would cause us to break into a sprint down the path of what? Let's see. Sorry, I probably quoted a sentence that doesn't add much value to any of this discussion.
I actually think the quotes, the capital punishment idea might be fair, but I don't think the point of this is to punish wealth building. I think the purpose of this is to reduce wealth inequality.
Right. So it goes back to the overarching point, right?
It's wealth inequality is a problem in this country, and it's going to take both increased taxes on the wealthy and helping those on the bottom to get back to a lower inequality.
Frankly, it may be impossible to reduce wealth inequality with a regressive tax system.
Oh, interesting. Okay. How
is it possible if you're paying less in tax on a per dollar basis?
I agree with that. Yeah.
Assuming proportional spending, and spending isn't proportional because as you get more rich, you spend less on cost of living as a percentage of your net worth.
Yeah. And I think that also answers the last bullet point, the unspoken motivation. Taxing unrealized gains would only generate a tiny amount of revenue compared to federal deficits. By process of elimination, the real motivation for this proposal must be punitive in nature. And kind of, yes. I think the purpose of this kind of tax is trying to make things more fair.
So it's a pendulum, like most things, right? And first of all, you have to have some understanding of where the pendulum is today. Is it at the point where we're overtaxing the rich and undertaxing the poor, or is it the other way around? And that can be supported by the data. We've looked at this from many different angles, and it's clearly the point where taxation is regressive from many different perspectives.
And when I think this comes down to, again, I'm not a politician. I will read the issues and vote, but I'm not involved enough to try to influence policy at all, or even like have predictions on how to. I think the general idea is that the people that this might be hurting, their lifestyles are already so well off. This does not impact their lifestyle. But the people this is trying to help will genuinely benefit. They will live longer. They will be healthier. They will be able to send their kids to school more effectively. They will have less stress. Like, there's genuine lifestyle benefits by reducing wealth inequality that doesn't hurt the centimillionaires and genuinely helps the people at the bottom end.
Right. These last 2 points, the way I see it is the pendulum is like all the way on this side in terms of fairness. And these concerns are saying we're going to swing so fast to the other side, we won't know what hit us.
I agree.
And we're going to overshoot and therefore don't even try.
Correct. I agree. Like we got to hold that pendulum up just in case it swings too far the other way.
Right. I think that sums up the argument in general.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good conclusion. That I'd say everything he puts up here is a fair bullet point. I don't want to give it too much like a critique or criticism, except for maybe the asset inflation. That one I think is just ridiculous. But it's a fair article. But like you said, I have multiple times. Do we want to continue down the status quo of a regressive tax system, or do we want to make it a progressive tax system? Do we want to put a system in place that will tax the wealthy more at a tax rate than we tax the poor? Because currently we don't have that.
All right. I think that sums it up, Aaron.
Yeah, we were a little longer than we usually are. So, but this was a really good conversation. Thank you.
All right, Aaron, I enjoyed the conversation as well. If you have any feedback on this, if you think our points are completely off base, let us know. We're happy to, think laterally on where we're totally wrong on this. I'm happy to understand, what things I'm missing out on. Aaron, I'm sure it's similar for you. So I think it's an important discussion to have. I think, even if we didn't do it complete justice, hopefully we brought to attention the light of this legislation and at least one perspective out there on why it may or may not make sense. So thanks everybody for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.